A chill, sharper than any winter breeze, ran through me as I glimpsed the unfamiliar woman staring back from the boutique mirror. 67 years had etched themselves onto my face, but the figure in the deep sapphire gown, adorned with a brooch glinting far too brightly for my usual taste, felt like an apparition. My life's uniform had long been a testament to practicality: utilitarian pants, modest blouses, clothes that served a purpose, not a stage. Yet this ensemble, bolder than any garment I'd purchased in years, now clung to me. "It truly brings out the depth in your eyes, Miss Albright," the sales clerk's voice purred, her smile too practiced, too smooth, as she adjusted the delicate folds. "An exquisite choice." I offered a curt nod, compliments a rare currency in my world. But today, a fragile hope flickered that this transformation, however superficial, might hold some sway. The reason for this extravagance? My son's impending wedding. Leo, my only child, was set to marry Vivian in a mere 2 weeks, and despite the gaping chasm that had formed between us, a stubborn part of me clung to the desire to appear worthy. "I'll take it," I announced, the words feeling foreign on my tongue as I retreated to the privacy of the changing room. While the assistant navigated the complexities of the sale, my gaze drifted to the urban pulse of Wilmington outside the boutique's grand window. It was a peculiar, almost haunting thought that in my nearly 7 decades, I had never truly escaped the confines of this town. This was where my small dry-cleaning business had taken root, where my late husband, David, found his final resting place, and where I, Leslie Albright, had single-handedly carved out a life and raised a son. And now Leo's marriage, the supposed final grand act that tethered me to this familiar, yet increasingly alien, landscape. Cash card cool in my palm, I stepped back onto the pavement, the gown a mysterious weight in its opulent bag. My unassuming, well-worn sedan, a faithful relic of countless journeys, waited. A quick glance at my watch confirmed the time, 2 p.m. My next appointment, a crucial one, was at 3 o'clock with the celebration specialists. Their office, a sleek, almost sterile space, was nestled in one of Wilmington's more modern business complexes. White walls, stark against the vibrant city, were adorned with saccharine images of beaming couples, their happiness almost offensively perfect. A young woman, brightly named Ashley, led me into a hushed consultation room. "Good afternoon, Miss Albright. We've compiled all the necessary paperwork," she chirped, meticulously spreading folders across the gleaming table. "You're still certain you wish your involvement to remain completely private?" My affirmation was swift, unwavering. Absolute confidentiality had been my unwavering demand. Leo and Vivian must, under no circumstances, discover the true source of their lavish celebration. They believed Vivian's affluent parents were generously covering every expense. Ashley's professionally pleasant demeanor faltered slightly, replaced by a flicker of curiosity. It was clear such covert philanthropy wasn't a daily occurrence. Most parents, I mused, reveled in their financial contributions, not buried them. "My son and I share a rather intricate past," I offered, a veiled explanation that spared her the full, bitter truth. "He would never accept direct financial aid from me. It would, in his eyes, erode his carefully constructed image of authority before his new fiancée." The deeper narrative, the one that twisted my gut, remained unsaid. How, after David's sudden departure 16 years prior, I'd built an empire of efficiency from a single coin-operated machine, simultaneously nurturing a boy who, upon entering his prestigious university, began to perceive my humble origins as a blight. How, with each passing year, he meticulously distanced himself, convinced I was too unsophisticated, too common for his burgeoning social circle. And then, the ironic twist, 5 years ago, when I liquidated my chain of 7 laundromats for a truly impressive sum, his interest in me, or rather, in my newfound capital, abruptly reignited. It was never about me, only the numbers. "Rest assured, Miss Albright," Every detail will be handled with the utmost discretion, as agreed, Ashley reiterated, her smile firmly back in place. Here are the itemized lists for the Grandeur Hotel ballroom, the photography package, the elaborate floral arrangements, and the musical entertainment. I meticulously scrutinized each line, the figures a dizzying dance of zeros. The total was indeed staggering, over $80,000. Yet it was a sum I could easily command. Leo, despite our estrangement, was still my flesh and blood, and a part of me, a foolish, maternal part, yearned for his day to be nothing short of spectacular. You do understand that any cancellation within 7 days of the event will result in a significant financial penalty, correct? Ashley prompted, extending a pen. I understand, I stated, signing the final document, the ink a dark, definitive promise. But there will be no cancellation. Oh, the exquisite, chilling irony of those words, a foreboding whisper I couldn't yet comprehend. The subsequent 2 weeks blurred into a dreamlike haze. Not once during that span did Leo initiate contact, not a single inquiry about my attendance at his impending nuptials. No formal invitation arrived, either. I rationalized it, of course. It must be an oversight, I told myself, clinging to the fading vestiges of hope. What kind of son, after all, neglects to invite his own mother to his wedding? The morning of the ceremony arrived with a deceptive brilliance, sunlight streaming through my bedroom window. I rose early, indulging in a lengthy, steaming shower, then meticulously styled my hair, still thick despite its complete transformation to silver. I slipped into the new sapphire gown, adding a subtle touch of makeup. The honeymoon gift, a substantial check, tucked into an exquisitely embossed envelope, rested on my dresser. The Grandeur Hotel, the chosen venue, stood as the epitome of Wilmington's opulence, its grand facade gleaming under the morning sun. I navigated my unassuming sedan into its sprawling, luxury car-filled parking lot, and for a fleeting moment, a prickle of unease settled in. Perhaps a taxi would have been a more discreet entrance, I mused, avoiding the stark contrast of my humble vehicle against this backdrop of wealth. No, I quickly dismissed the thought. I had always been a woman of practicality, and I certainly wouldn't alter my authentic self for the superficial judgments of others. The hotel lobby pulsed with a vibrant energy. Guests, arrayed in their finest suits and flowing gowns, coalesced into animated groups, their laughter echoing through the cavernous space. I scanned the multitude, searching for a familiar face, a friendly beacon in this sea of strangers. Most, it became clear, were Vivian's friends and relatives. Leo, over the years, had rarely, if ever, seen fit to introduce me to his ever-evolving inner circle. Grandma! A joyous cry, like a sudden burst of sunshine, cut through the sophisticated chatter. I turned, and there was Sophia, my 22-year-old granddaughter from Leo's first marriage, rushing towards me. Tall and graceful, with my striking blue eyes and her father's dark, wavy hair, Sophia remained my solitary true connection, the one who genuinely cared to maintain contact. "You came," she exclaimed, pulling me into a warm, heartfelt embrace. "I'm so happy. I was afraid you might decide not to, because of," she trailed off, the unspoken words hanging between us, "because of your strained relationship with Dad." How could I ever miss my own son's wedding, sweetheart? I managed a genuine smile, a rare commodity these days. "You look absolutely radiant, darling." Sophia, resplendent in a soft sky blue bridesmaid's dress, adjusted a stray lock of hair and glanced around. "Come on, I'll introduce you to everyone," she offered, but at that precise moment, Leo approached. My son's expression was taut, a visible strain beneath the veneer of wedding day festivity. At 42, he remained a striking man, tall, trim, with a meticulously groomed beard that now boasted streaks of gray. His eyes, exact replicas of his late father's, met mine with ill-concealed irritation. "Mother," he uttered, the single word dripping with disbelief. "What are you doing here?" Confusion washed over me. This was hardly the anticipated greeting, the embrace, the grateful acknowledgement. "I'm here for your wedding, of course," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. Leo's gaze darted nervously around the crowded lobby, a flicker of panic in his eyes. He then seized my arm, guiding me abruptly away from the other guests, his grip surprisingly firm. "Listen," he began, his voice lowered, firm, almost menacing. "I thought we had an understanding about this. You are not on the guest list." I stared at him, utterly dumbfounded. An understanding? We had discussed nothing. His calls over the past month had been sparse, brief, and painfully formal. "What are you talking about, Leo? How could I possibly not be invited to my own son's wedding?" He sighed, a dramatic exhalation, like a burdened professor forced to explain elementary concepts to a slow pupil. "Mother, this is an exclusive event. Vivian's parents are here, our colleagues, our influential associates." He paused, searching for the gentlest way to deliver the cruelest blow. "I don't believe you'll feel comfortable here." In that gut-wrenching moment, the truth slammed into me, cold and unforgiving. He hadn't merely forgotten me, he had deliberately, meticulously excluded me. I, a woman who had built her life with calloused hands, who had forged a business from nothing, was deemed utterly unsuitable for the glittering, sophisticated world of his new family. "You're ashamed of me." It wasn't a question, but a stark, painful declaration. "No, of course not," Leo retorted, too quickly, too vehemently, his eyes betraying the lie. "It's just, Vivian is very particular about every detail being perfect. Her parents have invested a substantial amount, and you don't want your laundry lady to sully the pristine image." I finished for him, the bitter taste of the words coating my tongue. "Mother, please don't start," he snapped, annoyance overriding any pretense of politeness. "I'm simply asking you to be reasonable. We can connect after the honeymoon, in a more private setting." Just then, Vivian materialized, gliding towards us with an almost ethereal grace. At 38, she was a vision of perfection, slender, immaculately made up, her hair styled to a fault, her designer gown flowing around her. Her face held an expression of polite, almost practiced, surprise as she assessed me. "Leo, darling, is everything quite all right?" she inquired, her gaze coolly appraising. "Yes, everything's perfectly fine," he responded smoothly, a forced ease in his voice. "Mother was just leaving." Vivian offered a saccharine smile, thin and unconvincing. "Oh, Miss Albright, what a true pity you couldn't join us for the ceremony. Perhaps some other time." She spoke as if my brief presence were an inconvenience, as if I were a mere passerby who had momentarily intruded. I looked to Leo, my heart aching for him to intervene, to utter a single word in my defense. But he remained a statue, silent, his gaze fixed somewhere beyond my shoulder. "I'm sorry, but you weren't invited," he finally murmured, barely audible as if the words physically pained him. "Please, just go." Tears pricked at my eyes, a burning sensation, but I forced them back. Not here. Not in front of them. For years, I had willfully turned a blind eye to his neglect, fabricated excuses for his behavior, pretended that everything was as it should be. But today, something deep inside me snapped, shattered beyond repair. "As you wish." I managed to maintain a facade of composure, my voice even. "My sincerest congratulations to you both." I turned to depart, but Sophia's hand shot out, her fingers closing around my arm, a desperate, anchoring grip. "Grandma, please stay." Her eyes were already shimmering with unshed tears. "I truly want you here." I gently stroked her cheek. "It's all right, sweetheart. Call me tomorrow." I moved towards the grand exit, acutely aware of the prickling sensation of curious gazes upon my back. Some guests had ceased their conversations, openly observing our hushed, tense exchange. I wondered what convoluted narrative they had been spun. Did they truly know that the groom's own mother had been barred from his most significant day? Stepping out of the opulent hotel and into the fresh air, I drew a deep, shuddering breath. The sun still blazed overhead, deceptively bright, yet the world around me felt as though a shadow had irrevocably fallen. My legs, stiff and uncooperative, carried me to my car. I slid into the driver's seat, and for several long minutes I simply sat there, staring blankly through the windshield, desperately trying to reconcile the surreal events that had just unfolded. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, I reached into my purse and retrieved my phone. The screen displayed 4:20 p.m. The wedding ceremony, the very essence of the day, was scheduled to begin in a mere 40 minutes. The lavish reception, slated for 7 p.m., had been entirely prepaid. By me. My gaze fell upon the elegant envelope, the generous gift still nestled within my bag. Slowly, with a newfound resolve hardening within me, I started the car. I drove away from the Grandeur Hotel, the glittering monument where my son was about to embark on his new life, a life I now realized was designed to exclude me entirely. The journey home stretched endlessly, a blur of familiar streets I navigated on autopilot. Traffic lights and other vehicles passed by unnoticed, my mind consumed by the crushing weight of fragmented phrases. You weren't called. Mother was just leaving. An elite event. Each word felt like a physical blow, a fresh wound. 67 years of striving, of unconditional love, culminating in this unbearable crescendo, ejected from my own son's wedding, an unwanted specter. My quiet street welcomed me with its usual, almost eerie calm. Ancient maple trees lined the road, their leaves whispering in the gentle breeze. Neat, unassuming houses stood sentinel. Nothing here had changed in decades. I pulled up to my modest, single-story house, its white picket fence a symbol of a life lived simply, deliberately. For several long minutes, I remained in the car, unable to force myself to exit, as if by staying put, I could somehow stave off the inevitable confrontation with the raw, brutal reality of what had just occurred. Finally, I pushed open the car door and made my way to the porch. The keys trembled in my hand as I unlocked the familiar front door. Crossing the threshold, I kicked off my shoes, a silent act of shedding the day's unbearable weight, and walked into the living room. The house, where the majority of my life had unfolded, now felt eerily foreign, hollowed out by the events of the day. My eyes landed on the cherished photographs displayed on the mantelpiece, a chubby-cheeked Leo as a child, his gap-toothed grin radiating pure, innocent joy, a gangly teenage Leo, proudly clutching a soccer ball, a beaming Leo in his crisp graduation cap and gown, triumphant. In every single image, he smiled directly at me, a constant, loving presence. When had everything shifted so irrevocably? At what precise moment had I transmuted into a burden, a source of profound embarrassment for him? I picked up a faded photograph of David and me, standing with a tiny Leo on a sun-drenched beach, the ocean a shimmering backdrop. David was 38 then, I was 33, Leo just 8. We radiated such simple, unadulterated happiness, a perfectly ordinary middle-class family enjoying a fleeting moment of peace. What would you say now, David? I whispered, tracing my finger over my late husband's smiling face in the worn photograph. What wisdom would you offer your son? But David had been gone for 16 years, a victim of a sudden, cruel heart attack when Leo was 26. Back then, my son still embraced me, still visited every weekend, still showed no hint of shame regarding his roots. I carefully replaced the photograph and sank heavily into David's worn armchair, its familiar contours offering little comfort. David and I had launched our humble venture together, a small, unassuming laundromat nestled on the corner of Maple and 4th. He had managed the complex machinery and negotiated with suppliers. I had overseen the day-to-day operations, handled customer relations, and meticulously balanced the books. After his death, the entire formidable weight of the business and our family had fallen squarely upon my shoulders. But I had not merely managed, Over the ensuing decade, I had painstakingly expanded that single laundromat into a thriving chain of 7 successful businesses scattered across Wilmington. In the top drawer of my kitchen table, I still kept the faded records of countless checks I'd meticulously written to Leo over the years, the down payment on his first apartment when he decided to live independently, the funds for his first wedding to Sarah, Sophia's mother, the exorbitant legal fees incurred during their divorce, the yearly tuition for Sophia's exclusive private school, and even to extricate him from temporary financial quagmires when his credit card debts spiraled dangerously. I was always there, an unwavering pillar of support, both emotionally and financially. Yet, with each passing year, Leo's presence in my life grew more attenuated, more distant. His carefully curated circle of new, important friends, his burgeoning career in the cutthroat world of insurance, his insatiable yearning for entry into high society, all these elements conspired, slowly but surely, to carve an ever-deepening chasm between us. Then, the almost comical irony, 5 years ago, when I decided to sell the entire business for a genuinely impressive sum, Leo's interest in my well-being abruptly, almost alarmingly, surged. He started visiting with uncharacteristic frequency, calling often, inquiring about my health with a feigned concern. I was far from naive. I understood, with a painful clarity, that his primary preoccupation was the windfall from the sale. But a small, stubborn part of me, the eternal mother, yearned to believe that beneath his financial curiosity, there lay a flicker of genuine familial concern. The sum I received was indeed breathtaking, $2,300,000. More money than I had ever dared to dream of. I purchased a newer, more reliable car, the same dependable sedan that had delivered me to the wedding today, extensively renovated my beloved home, and, following the astute advice of a seasoned financial expert, invested the bulk of the funds in secure, long-term assets. Leo, upon learning of the precise amount, swiftly materialized with a grand, brilliant business proposal. He passionately urged me to sink a substantial portion of my capital into a dubious startup spearheaded by one of his new, charismatic acquaintances. I flatly refused. It was too precarious, too shrouded in uncertainty, a reckless gamble. He took immediate, profound offense, labeling me as hopelessly old-fashioned, incapable of grasping the visionary future. I gently reminded him that my old-fashioned and prudent approach had, in fact, built the very successful enterprise that now afforded me this comfortable retirement. We argued a tense, bitter exchange. After that, his visits dwindled further, his phone calls growing painfully terse, devoid of any genuine warmth. When he announced his engagement to Vivian 8 months ago, a fragile surge of joy swept through me. Perhaps, I foolishly hoped, this new, significant phase in his life would finally bridge the growing divide between us. Oh, the persistent foolishness of an old woman's heart. The sharp, insistent ring of my phone, tucked away in my purse, abruptly yanked me from the painful labyrinth of my memories. The bank's familiar number flashed on the screen. My weekly check-in call from Robert, my personal financial manager, a routine procedure for clients holding substantial deposits. Ms. Albright, good afternoon, I heard Robert's cheerful, professional voice. I'm just calling to verify the status of your accounts and investments. I remained utterly silent, my gaze fixed on the antique clock adorning my kitchen wall. 5:15 p.m. The wedding ceremony, the culmination of months of meticulous planning and exorbitant spending, must have concluded by now. Leo and Vivian were, at this very moment, likely exchanging their vows, solidifying their union. And in less than 90 minutes, the extravagant reception would commence, a lavish dinner for 120 privileged guests, an endless flow of premium wines, live orchestral music, and dancing until the early hours of dawn. Every single detail, every opulent flourish, had been paid for in advance. By me. Miss Albright, are you still on the line? Robert's voice, now tinged with a hint of concern, broke through my thoughts. Yes, forgive me, I managed, a dry cough catching in my throat. I have a rather urgent inquiry, Robert. If I were to, hypothetically, wish to cancel certain payments scheduled for the next few hours, would that action be, technically, possible? Technically, yes, if they haven't been fully finalized within the system, Robert replied, his tone cautious. Which specific payments are we discussing? I quickly opened my email, navigating to the detailed invoice from the wedding agency. Several transactions, collectively totaling approximately $80,000, were listed. The Grandeur Hotel, Emerald Catering, Timeless Lens Photography Studio, Blossom Boutique, Floral Salon. I recited the list, each word reinforcing a growing, icy resolve within me. Robert remained silent, clearly taken aback by the unexpected turn of our conversation. These are quite substantial sums, Ms. Albright. May I respectfully inquire as to the reason for the sudden request? They are for my son's wedding services, I explained, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. However, there have been unforeseen circumstances. I paused, letting the implication hang heavily in the air. I wish to cancel all payments. Immediately. I understand, Ms. Albright, Robert said carefully, a note of apprehension in his voice. But I must inform you that significant cancellation penalties may apply, and I am fully prepared to bear any and all penalties. I interrupted him, my voice unwavering, absolute. Please proceed with whatever is necessary. There was a brief, pregnant silence, punctuated only by the rapid clicks of Robert's keyboard. All right, I see the payments in the system now. Most of them are actually scheduled to process tomorrow, so we have time to intercept those. A few, however, might have already received partial authorization. I'll contact the back office immediately to confirm. Thank you, Robert. One more thing. I've been considering. If I halt these payments, the funds will simply revert to my account. But what purpose would they serve? They were meant for Leo, for his supposedly joyous new beginning, a life in which, as it turns out, I have no place. I would like to establish a trust account in the name of my granddaughter, Sophia Albright. I wish for these funds to be transferred there immediately. Of course, Ms. Albright. That can certainly be arranged. We'll need to complete some formal paperwork, but we can initiate the process today itself. We discussed the necessary administrative details, and Robert promised a callback as soon as the payments were definitively halted. As our conversation drew to a close, a strange, exhilarating sense of liberation washed over me. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I had acted decisively on my own terms, refusing to silently accept Leo's dismissive behavior, refusing to pretend his disdain didn't cut me to the core. My very next call was to the wedding agency. Ashley answered on the third ring, her voice bright and professional. Celebration specialists, how may I assist you? Hello, Ashley, this is Leslie Albright. Oh, Ms. Albright. Her tone shifted, a note of surprise creeping in. The wedding has already begun. Everything is proceeding splendidly. Was there something urgent you wished to clarify? I'm calling to inform you that I am canceling all wedding-related payments. A sudden, shocked silence descended upon the line, followed by Ashley's uncertain, almost incredulous laugh, as if she believed she'd misheard a crude joke. I'm sorry, what? You're not serious, are you? No, Ashley, I stated, my voice calm, resolute. I have just spoken with my bank. All financial transactions will be stopped. But that's utterly impossible. Her voice cracked, tinged with rising panic. The ceremony is underway. The guests are all here. The banquet begins in barely an hour. You can't just. I can, I interjected, my voice unwavering, and I am doing precisely that. Miss Albright, there's a force majeure clause in our contract. There will be substantial repercussions. Please, let's discuss this. What has happened? Perhaps we can find a solution, a compromise. The solution, Ashley, is that the payments have been irrevocably canceled. But the vendors, the venue, this will ignite an absolute scandal. Panic now fully saturated her every word. That, I replied, my voice chillingly devoid of emotion, is no longer my concern. I could almost physically sense Ashley's mind racing, desperately trying to grasp the catastrophic implications on the other end of the line. Okay, I have to inform the bride and groom. Go right ahead, I responded, my voice steady, unyielding. Tell them their anonymous benefactor has abruptly withdrawn all funding. But they believe Vivian's parents are paying. Ashley exclaimed, her voice strained with desperation. How do I even begin to explain this? That, too, is not my concern, I paused, letting my next words hang heavy in the air, a cruel, undeniable truth. However, you are perfectly welcome to inform them of the truth, that the groom's own mother, who was so pointedly not invited to the wedding, was, in fact, the one discreetly covering the entire cost of their lavish celebration. Oh my God, Ashley mumbled, the horror in her voice palpable. I had no idea. Now you do. Good day, Ashley. I ended the call, placing the phone gently, almost ceremoniously, back onto the table. My hands trembled, but it wasn't from fear or adrenaline. It was a strange, almost forgotten, sensation of profound freedom. For too many years, I had allowed Leo to manipulate me, to casually exploit my love and my financial resources, offering absolutely nothing in return. I had yearned for a glimmer of gratitude, a flicker of respect, a simple measure of human warmth, and had received only chilling neglect. Suddenly, the phone vibrated again. Sophia's name illuminated the screen. I drew a deep, fortifying breath and answered. Grandma? My granddaughter's voice was laced with frantic worry. Where are you? Why did you leave? I closed my eyes, a wave of weariness washing over me. Sophia was the sole person in this entire painful saga whose well-being truly mattered to me. Your father asked me to depart, dear, I explained, my voice soft but firm. He stated I was not invited. What? She cried out, incredulous. That's impossible. He couldn't have said that. Yes, Sophia, he did. From the other end of the line, I heard a muffled chorus of voices, a growing murmur of confusion. The ceremony, it seemed, had concluded, and the guests were beginning to mill about, making their way towards the reception hall. That's utterly terrible, Grandma. I'll speak to him, make him apologize. He had no right to. Don't, sweetheart, I gently interrupted her, my voice unwavering. Don't allow this to mar your evening. Enjoy yourself, dance, savor every moment of this celebration. What celebration? Her voice was thick with unshed tears, choked with emotion. How can I possibly enjoy myself knowing how you've been treated? It's simply not fair. Life, dear, is rarely fair. This, unfortunately, is neither the first nor will it be the last instance of injustice. Grandmother. Sophia's voice suddenly dropped, almost to a whisper, laced with a new, unsettling urgency. Something truly strange is unfolding here. The hotel manager is embroiled in a heated argument with Papa and Vivian. They both look incredibly distressed. I offered no response. So, Robert had already initiated the blocks, the payments undeniably halted. Or perhaps Ashley had already delivered the devastating news to the event organizers. Either way, the consequences of my decision were already manifesting, rippling outwards. Grandma, are you still there? Sophia's worried voice cut through my thoughts. Yes, sweetie. Listen, no matter what transpires tonight, please remember this. I love you and nothing, absolutely nothing, will ever change that. You're scaring me, she laughed nervously, a brittle sound. You sound as though you're saying goodbye. No, of course not, I reassured her, though a part of me felt a profound finality. I simply want you to know that you can always count on me. I know, Grandma. I love you too. Voices in the background called Sophia's name, their urgency growing. I have to go, she said quickly, a frantic note in her voice. I think there are some major problems beginning with the banquet. I'll call you back later, okay? Of course, darling. Go. I ended the call, slowly leaning back in my armchair. It was done. The line had been crossed, the bridge irrevocably burned. There was no turning back. Whatever the aftermath, I knew, with a quiet certainty, that I had acted correctly. For the first time in years, I had shed the role of my son's invisible, ever-present ATM and had finally, definitively, begun to reclaim my own dignity. The phone rang again, almost immediately. This time, Leo's name blazed on the screen. I stared at the vibrant display, watching the device vibrate silently on the desk. One ring, a second, a third, then blessed silence. A minute later, a text message appeared. "Mom, we need to talk. Now. Call me back." I flipped the phone face down, its screen dark against the polished wood. I harbored no desire to speak with my son, at least not today. Let him first grapple with the stark reality of what he had done. Let him feel, if only for a moment, a fraction of the profound pain he had so carelessly inflicted upon me. I rose from my chair and walked towards the window. The sun, a fiery orb, was beginning its slow descent, painting the western sky in spectacular hues of orange and pink. Strangely, profoundly, for the first time in countless years, I felt truly alive. It was as if a colossal weight, a heavy burden I had unknowingly carried for decades, had finally been lifted, allowing me to breathe freely. The phone continued its relentless clamor, ringing again and again and again. Sophia nervously fiddled with the elegant bracelet on her wrist, her gaze fixed on the unfolding spectacle. What had begun as her father's meticulously planned, seemingly flawless wedding was now spiraling into an unmitigated disaster before her very eyes. The Grandeur Hotel's opulent banquet hall, a vision of pristine white tablecloths, glittering crystal chandeliers, and lavish floral arrangements, now radiated an almost palpable tension. The festive atmosphere had utterly evaporated, replaced by a suffocating air of confusion and barely contained panic. In a corner of the vast room, her father, Leo Albright, was locked in a furious, hushed argument with the hotel manager, a portly, grim-faced man in a severe dark suit. Vivian, his newlywed wife, stood rigidly beside him, her perfect makeup unable to conceal the raw, desperate panic etched onto her features. There must be some egregious error, Sophia overheard her father insist, his voice strained. The payments were unequivocally confirmed a full week ago. The hotel manager shook his head slowly, deliberately. "Mr. Albright, I have just received an urgent communication from our finance department. The payment has been inexplicably reversed. We cannot, under any circumstances, provide services without confirmed payment." "But that's utterly preposterous." Vivian's parents, Sophia frowned, a flicker of confusion. Vivian's parents? Hadn't her father explicitly stated he was covering the entire cost of the wedding? He had, after all, consistently boasted about his significant financial independence and his meteoric rise in the insurance industry. Her confused musings were abruptly shattered by Vivian's high-pitched, almost hysterical voice. "Check again. There has to be some kind of mistake. The guests are already assembled. We cannot possibly cancel the banquet." Sophia scanned the room. Indeed, approximately 120 guests, dressed in their finest, had already gathered in the grand hall. Many sat at the tables, their expressions a mixture of bewilderment and growing impatience. Others stood in hushed groups, their conversations low, punctuated by curious, sidelong glances towards the escalating confrontation. Vivian's parents, an elegant, impeccably dressed couple in their late 60s, detached themselves from their group and strode purposefully towards their distraught daughter. "What in God's name is happening?" Vivian's father, Richard Holloway, a tall, distinguished man with silver hair and an imperious countenance, demanded, his voice resonating with authority. "Why isn't the champagne being served?" Vivian turned to him, her face a mask of utter despair. "Daddy, there's been some catastrophic misunderstanding about the payment. They're claiming the funds were withdrawn." "Withdrawn?" Richard's brow furrowed in disbelief, his eyes narrowing. What payments? Sophia observed Leo and Vivian exchange quick, panicked glances, a silent, frantic communication. At that precise moment, a woman entered the hall, clutching a clipboard, her name tag identifying her as a representative from the Celebration Specialists wedding agency. Mr. and Mrs. Albright, she addressed the newlyweds, her voice grave. I require an urgent private discussion with you. They moved aside, forming a tight, agitated circle, their hushed voices barely audible. On a sudden, impulsive urge, Sophia subtly edged closer, straining her ears to catch every word. All payments have been suddenly withdrawn by the primary financial backer, the agency woman was saying, her voice tight with professional distress. We've attempted to contact the bank, but the decision is final. Irreversible. The primary backer? Leo interjected, his voice rising, a desperate edge to it. What are you talking about? Who is the primary backer? The woman hesitated, a flicker of discomfort crossing her face. Your mother, Mr. Albright. Leslie Albright. She was responsible for the vast majority of your wedding expenditures. Sophia barely suppressed a gasp, a sharp intake of breath. Grandmother. My grandmother was the silent force, the one who had bankrolled this entire lavish spectacle. Leo's already pale face strained further, then instantly flushed a dark, angry crimson. What utter, malicious nonsense is this? My mother paid for nothing. It was all Vivian's parents. Richard Holloway, hearing his name invoked, took a menacing step closer. What in the blazes are you talking about, Leo? Margaret, and I only covered the rehearsal dinner. You explicitly told us you were handling the main expenses. Vivian, now ghostly pale, stared at her husband, her eyes wide with bewildered betrayal. Leo, what are they saying? What is this about? Sophia watched her father swallow hard, his Adam's apple visibly twitching. He frantically fumbled for his cell phone and began dialing, stepping away from the increasingly hostile group. Sophia was certain he was calling her grandmother, a desperate, futile plea. Seizing the moment of utter chaos, she quietly slipped through the glass doors onto the hotel terrace. She had to call her grandmother, immediately. Pulling out her own cell phone, she quickly dialed the familiar number. Grandma, she asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and adrenaline, when Leslie answered. We're in an absolute catastrophe here. What in the world is happening? There was a beat of profound silence on the other end, then Grandma's soft sigh, almost a whisper. I suppose they've finally discovered I canceled the payments. So, it's true. Sophia lowered her voice, even though the terrace was deserted, the evening air a quiet witness. You paid for Papa's wedding? But why keep it such a secret? Your father would never accept direct financial assistance from me, my dear. You know how strained our relationship has become. He desperately wanted to throw a magnificent wedding for Vivian, but in truth, he couldn't genuinely afford it on his own. Sophia leaned against the cool railing of the terrace. The evening air was surprisingly warm, and somewhere in the distance, the setting sun was painting the sky in a breathtaking palette of pinks and golds. Such a beautiful, serene evening for such a devastating turn of events. But why did you cancel the payments? She finally asked, though a chilling premonition already whispered the answer in her heart. Because your father literally expelled me from my own son's wedding, Leslie replied simply, her voice devoid of any self-pity. He stated I wasn't invited, that I didn't fit in with their elite social gathering. Sophia closed her eyes, a wave of profound disappointment washing over her. She loved her father, but sometimes his snobbery, his relentless need to project an image of superiority, transcended all acceptable boundaries. That's utterly dreadful, grandmother. Please, try to forgive him. It's not about forgiveness, Sophia. It's about respect. I've supported your father for years, offering him financial assistance whenever he needed it, and all I ever requested in return was a little attention, a modicum of gratitude. But for him, I was never truly good enough, not educated enough, Not sophisticated enough, simply not enough. Sophia heard a fresh surge of noise from inside and turned. Through the gleaming glass doors, she could see utter pandemonium now engulfing the banquet hall. Staff in the uniforms of the floral company were rapidly dismantling the exquisite arrangements, packing them into large cardboard boxes. Waiters were stripping tables, clearing away glasses and cutlery with frantic haste. The guests stared at each other, their faces etched with confusion, some already gathering their belongings, clearly preparing to make a hasty exit. "Grandmother, the place is completely falling apart," Sophia exclaimed, her voice barely a whisper, returning to the call. "The flowers are being removed, the catering staff are packing up all the food. It's an absolute catastrophe. I am truly sorry you have to witness this, dear." Leslie's voice was tinged with genuine regret, a sorrow not for her actions, but for Sophia's distress. "You don't deserve to be dragged into this humiliating situation." "It's not about me," Sophia insisted, shaking her head vehemently, though her grandmother couldn't see the gesture. It's so incredibly humiliating for Papa and Vivian. All the guests are watching their perfect wedding disintegrate before their very eyes. Sometimes, lessons are exceptionally harsh," Leslie said quietly, her voice tinged with a philosophical resignation, "but they are often necessary." Again, a sharp burst of noise caught Sophia's attention. Through the glass, she witnessed her father, his face inflamed, vehemently shouting at the catering manager. Beside him, Vivian looked utterly distraught, on the verge of breaking down, her meticulously styled hair beginning to sag, her makeup smudged from what were clearly unshed tears. "Daddy's absolutely furious," Sophia reported, her voice low. "He's screaming at everyone, and Vivian looks like she's about to burst into tears." "Your father has always struggled profoundly with adversity," Leslie sighed, a familiar weariness in her voice. "When things don't align precisely with his carefully constructed plans, his temper erupts." At that moment, Sophia noticed Leo pulling out his phone once more, frantically jabbing at the screen. A second later, Leslie's phone began to ring, an insistent, vibrating hum. "It's Daddy calling you," Sophia stated, her voice tight. "I can see that," Grandma replied, her tone dry. "It's the 5th time in the last 30 minutes. I won't answer it. He won't calm down until he speaks with you. Let him cool down first. No good will come of talking to him in this agitated state." Sophia reluctantly re-entered the hall. The situation was visibly deteriorating at an alarming pace. The hotel manager was now striding through the rapidly emptying room, no longer politely asking but unequivocally demanding that the remaining guests depart if the outstanding bill wasn't settled within 30 minutes. Vivian's parents looked utterly aghast, their faces a mixture of shock and profound embarrassment. Richard Holloway was now hotly admonishing Leo, jabbing a furious finger at his chest. "Grandma, Vivian's parents are having a furious argument with Daddy now," Sophia whispered into the phone, her voice strained. "Apparently, he told them he was paying for everything himself, and they had absolutely no idea you were co-financing. Your father never missed an opportunity to appear more successful, more in control, than he truly was." Leslie's voice was bitter, a long-held grievance surfacing. "He always felt compelled to impress what he considered the right people." Sophia edged closer to the escalating dispute, attempting to remain as inconspicuous as possible. "You swore you would handle all the expenses," Richard roared, his voice laced with indignation. "You boasted your business was thriving, booming. And now it turns out that all this time, your mother was secretly footing the bill for your wedding, a mother you didn't even see fit to invite." "That's not true," Leo protested, his voice cracking, his defenses crumbling. "I had no idea she had interfered. This is some monstrous misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Richard scoffed, a sneer of contempt twisting his lips. "The only misunderstanding here is that my daughter married a man like you." Vivian, standing rigidly nearby, finally succumbed, bursting into heart-wrenching sobs. Papa, please don't, she choked out, her voice raw with anguish. Not here. Not in front of everyone. But it was futile. The remaining guests made no attempt to conceal their avid interest in the unfolding domestic drama. Someone, shamelessly, even filmed the entire scene on their cell phone. Sophia imagined, with horror, the videos swiftly proliferating across social media platforms, a viral spectacle. Grandma, it's utterly dreadful, she whispered into the phone, tears now streaming down her own face. Everything's collapsing. Richard just called Daddy a liar in front of all the guests. I am truly sorry for that, dear, Leslie replied, and Sophia detected a genuine sorrow in her grandmother's voice, a sorrow not for Leo's humiliation, but for the inherent sadness of the situation. But your father made his choice when he decided his own mother wasn't good enough for his new life, his new image. At that precise moment, the hotel manager clapped his hands sharply, the sound cutting through the stunned silence, commanding everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced loudly, his voice crisp and official, due to unforeseen circumstances, this event is hereby cancelled. Please vacate the premises within 15 minutes. A confused murmur rippled through the dwindling crowd. Guests began to gather their belongings, many approaching the devastated newlyweds, offering awkward apologies and bewildered glances of sympathy. Sophia watched as Vivian, her face buried in her hands, fled the hall, supported by her distraught mother. Leo stood motionless amidst the swirling chaos, his posture defeated, utterly bewildered and publicly shamed. They've cancelled the banquet entirely, Sophia informed her grandmother, her voice flat. They're demanding everyone leave. I understand, Leslie replied quietly. You should leave too, dear. There is no reason for you to remain there. But what about Daddy? I can't just abandon him in this state. You are a kind and loyal daughter, Sophia, far more so than he perhaps deserves. But sometimes, people must face the consequences of their actions entirely on their own. Sophia hesitated, her heart torn by conflicting loyalties. On one hand, she fully comprehended her grandmother's righteous indignation. Leo's treatment of her today had been inexcusable. On the other hand, he was, undeniably, her father, and witnessing him so utterly broken, so publicly humiliated, was agonizing. At that very moment, Leo's gaze landed on her. His eyes, burning with a raw, desperate fury, fixed upon her. He strode purposefully in her direction, his face contorted. Are you speaking to her? He demanded, pointing a trembling finger at the phone in her hand. Let me talk to her. Sophia instinctively took a step back, guarding the phone. Dad, now is not the time. Give me the phone, he bellowed, his hand outstretched, demanding. Grandma, Daddy wants to talk to you. Sophia blurted out into the receiver. He is truly, truly furious. I hear you, Leslie replied, her voice calm, utterly composed. Don't give him the phone if you are uncomfortable. But if he insists, I am prepared to speak with him. Before Sophia could make another move, Leo lunged, snatching the phone from her hand. Mother, he roared into the receiver, his voice thick with raw emotion. What in God's name have you done? Do you even comprehend that you've utterly destroyed my wedding? Sophia couldn't discern her grandmother's words, but she watched, mesmerized, as her father's face underwent a dramatic transformation, from unbridled fury to stunned disbelief, then back again to a simmering, impotent rage. How could you? His voice trembled, laced with an almost pathetic vulnerability. How could you humiliate me like this, in front of everyone? In front of Vivian's parents? In front of all our friends? A long, excruciating pause. Then, the words, laced with bitter accusation. This is completely different. Yes, I didn't include you on the guest list, but that is no justification to sabotage me like this. You did it out of sheer spite, out of cold, calculated revenge. Admit it. Another pause, even longer than the previous one, stretching tautly between them. Leo's face, already pale, grew progressively ashen. No, You don't grasp the gravity of this. I can't simply repay you now. I don't have that kind of liquid cash on hand, and the bank isn't open tonight. Sophia watched her father, utterly defeated, his shoulders gradually slumping as if all the air had been suddenly let out of him. Please, mother, a desperate, pleading note now entered his voice, a sound Sophia had rarely heard. Reverse the payments. We can discuss our differences later. Right now, my reputation, my marriage, everything is at stake. He listened for a while longer, his posture wilting, then his face contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He screamed something harsh, incomprehensible, and then, with a violent, unthinking motion, he hurled the phone towards Sophia. She barely caught it, her fingers closing around the cold metal just in time. "Grandma," she asked cautiously, bringing the phone to her ear, her voice a timid whisper. "Are you still there?" "Yes, dear." Leslie's voice was weary, but calm, utterly composed. "I'm afraid I was unable to assist your father. He is quite furious." Sophia watched Leo gesticulate wildly, passionately, as he continued his futile argument with the hotel manager. "I've never, ever seen him like this. He's always possessed a volatile temper," Leslie sighed, a ghost of a distant memory in her tone. Even as a small child, whenever anything deviated from his precise plans, he would erupt in furious tantrums. Leo pulled out his personal cell phone again, his fingers flying across the screen as he began frantically calling someone else. Judging by his agitated gestures and the grim set of his jaw, the conversation was tense, bordering on hostile. "I think he's desperately trying to find money," Sophia said, relaying the scene. "He's calling everyone he knows." "I doubt that will yield any positive results," Leslie replied, a note of certainty in her voice. "It would require an immense sum to cover all those expenses. Your father simply doesn't have any acquaintances wealthy enough to lend him $80,000 without prior arrangement." $80,000? Sophia gasped, her voice sharp with shock. "That's what the wedding truly cost. Your father and Vivian, in their desperate attempt to impress Vivian's parents and their high-ranking friends, incurred an extravagant bill. That kind of superficial impression comes with an exceptionally hefty price tag." The hall was now almost entirely deserted. Most of the guests had already made their ignominious exits from the hotel. The remaining staff were meticulously clearing away the last of the decorations and discarded dishes. Vivian re-entered the hall, escorted by her pale, grim-faced parents. Her eyes were swollen and red from prolonged crying, her once perfect makeup now a smudged ruin. She began furiously reprimanding Leo, who stood before her, utterly defeated, looking utterly lost. "It looks like their marriage won't even last," Sophia said sadly, a profound sense of melancholy in her voice. "Vivian is furious. Her parents are too. If their relationship cannot survive this very first, very public test, then it was never as strong as it appeared to be," Leslie stated philosophically, her voice calm and reasoned. The hotel manager, his patience clearly exhausted, approached Leo and spoke to him, pointedly gesturing towards his wrist where a watch would normally be. Leo nodded slowly, his shoulders slumping in a gesture of utter resignation. "Finally, we need to leave," Sophia said, her voice quiet but firm. "The manager is no longer asking, he is unequivocally demanding." "Where will you stay?" Leslie asked, a maternal concern still evident in her tone. "Do you have a safe place for the night?" "Yes, I have a room here in the same hotel," Sophia replied. "There's supposed to be a family brunch tomorrow." "Oh, good. Stay there then. Don't go back to your father's place tonight. He needs time to cool down, to process this." Sophia nodded, though her grandmother, miles away, couldn't see the gesture. "All right, grandmother, I will do that. And Sophia, my dearest, remember this. Whatever has transpired between me and your father has absolutely no bearing on my profound feelings for you." Sophia felt a painful lump form in her throat, a wave of emotion. I love you too, Grandma. I truly understand why you did what you did. I really, truly do. They exchanged their heartfelt goodbyes, and Sophia carefully placed her phone back into her purse. The hall was now almost completely empty. Leo stood by the grand exit, frantically typing something on his phone, a lone figure amidst the wreckage. Vivian and her parents had already vanished. The wedding, which was supposed to be the glorious dawn of a happy new life, had collapsed into a spectacular failure before it could even truly begin. Sophia walked over to her father, her steps hesitant. "Papa," she said softly, gently, "let's just get out of here." He slowly raised his eyes to hers, and she was utterly struck by the raw, bottomless despair in his gaze. "She ruined everything," he croaked, his voice hoarse, broken, out of pure, unadulterated revenge. Sophia shook her head, a silent, firm denial. "No, Papa. You ruined everything yourself the moment you chose to kick your own mother out of your wedding." She turned and walked towards the exit, leaving her father standing alone in the desolate banquet hall, amidst the silent, stark remnants of a shattered celebration. I woke abruptly to a loud, furious pounding on my front door. At first, I dismissed it, a phantom echo of a lingering dream, but it came again, insistent, angry, a rhythmic thudding that resonated through the house. A quick glance at the clock revealed it was only 7 in the morning. Who, in their right mind, would arrive so early, so violently? The pounding escalated, transforming into a relentless drumbeat, and then, unmistakably, I heard Leo's voice, raw with fury and demand. "Mother, open this door right now. I know you're inside." I slowly swung my legs out of bed, a strange, unexpected calm settling over me. After the tumultuous events of yesterday, there was no fear, no shred of regret, only a quiet, resolute certainty that I had acted decisively and correctly. Slipping on my bathrobe, I walked deliberately towards the front door. Leo continued his assault, pounding with such ferocity that the door seemed poised to fly off its hinges. The neighbors, I thought, must certainly be awake by now from the cacophony. Good. Let them bear witness to the character of my son. I unlatched the door and stood, silent, meeting Leo's wild, red-rimmed gaze. He looked utterly dreadful, his suit wrinkled, his hair a disheveled mess, his eyes bloodshot, as if he'd spent the entire night in a torment of sleepless rage. Which, knowing Leo, he most certainly had. "You." He jabbed a furious, accusing finger at me, forcibly pushing past me into the house, his fury palpable. "You utterly destroyed my life." I closed the door quietly behind him, the soft click a stark contrast to his earlier violence, and turned to face him. "Good morning, Leo," I stated, my voice even unruffled. "You're quite early. Don't you dare," he shrieked, his voice raw with indignation. "Don't you dare stand there and pretend like nothing happened." I walked past him, moving towards the kitchen. I desperately needed a cup of coffee before embarking on this inevitable, bitter confrontation. "I recall precisely what transpired," I said, filling the kettle with water, the mundane task a small anchor in the storm. "You insisted I leave your wedding, and I subsequently canceled the payments I was making for your celebration. You orchestrated this entire charade." Leo stalked behind me, his accusations spitting. "You deliberately, secretly, paid for all of this with the sole intent of revenge. You knew I didn't want you at the wedding." I placed the kettle on the stove, the gas igniting with a soft hiss, and turned to face my son, my gaze steady. "No, Leo. When I finalized the arrangements with the agency 2 months ago, I had absolutely no indication, no suspicion, that you would choose to exclude me. What kind of mother, pray tell, would ever anticipate such an act?" He fell silent for a fleeting moment, the raw truth momentarily disarming him, but he swiftly regained his footing. "You should have informed me you were paying. It's manipulative, going behind my back like that. Would you have accepted my money if I had offered it to you directly, openly?" Leo's gaze darted away, unable to meet mine. That's a completely different matter. The central point is that you ruined my wedding. You humiliated me beyond measure in front of all the guests, in front of Vivian's parents. The kettle began its insistent whistle, a shrill sound in the tense quiet. I calmly removed it from the heat and began brewing my coffee. Would you like some? I offered, the simple question a veiled challenge. No. He slammed his fist onto the kitchen table, the sudden impact rattling the sugar bowl. I did not come here for coffee. I demand to know why you did this to me. I sat down at the table, cradling my warm cup, and regarded my son carefully, allowing his fury to burn itself out. Why did I do this? Why, Leo, did you eject me from your own wedding? Why did you declare I wasn't invited? Why were you so profoundly ashamed of me in front of your elite guests? I wasn't ashamed, he mumbled, the denial utterly unconvincing, hollow. It's just that the wedding was meticulously planned for a specific social circle, a circle your mother evidently doesn't fit into. I finished his thought, my voice flat, devoid of self-pity. Because I am a simple woman who has toiled with her hands her entire life. Because I lack a prestigious university education or lofty connections within your high society. Because my very background, my very existence embarrasses you. Leo looked as if he yearned to vehemently object, to find some articulate defense, but no words materialized. Finally, he simply waved his hand in a dismissive gesture of frustration. It doesn't matter now. What's done is done. But you must rectify this. Fix it. I raised an eyebrow, a silent challenge. Fix it how, Leo? Return the payments, he blurted out, a desperate plea mixed with demand. Call the bank, the agency, all the suppliers. Tell them it was a colossal mistake. I took another slow sip of my coffee, its deep bitterness mirroring the situation. It's too late, Leo. The money has already been returned to my account. I received definitive confirmation from the bank last night. Then make new payments. He began to pace frantically around the kitchen, a caged animal. Vivian is absolutely hysterical. Her parents are threatening to sever all ties with us. We had to spend the night in a cheap motel because the hotel flatly refused to give us a room. I watched him, a vivid, almost painful memory surfacing, a small boy, years ago, similarly throwing a tantrum, thrashing about the room when he was denied a toy he desperately wanted. So many years had passed, and yet, in his core, nothing had truly changed. Where were you planning to spend your honeymoon? I inquired, my voice calm, almost detached. Leo stopped his pacing, looking at me with fresh suspicion. What does that have to do with anything? Italy. 2 weeks. The flight leaves tomorrow, or it was supposed to leave tomorrow. And who financed that trip? He frowned, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Me, of course. Vivian and I paid for it ourselves. No, I shook my head slowly, definitively. I paid for that too. Through the very same agency. It was all included in the comprehensive package. Leo froze, his face draining of all color, a profound shock replacing his anger. He slowly, almost imperceptibly, sank into the chair opposite me. What are you implying? His voice was barely a whisper now, thin and reedy. What was the grand total? I sighed, the weight of the revelation heavy in the air. $86,400. That is the exact cost of your wedding and your 2-week honeymoon in Italy, Leo. And every single penny was provided by me. He stared at me, his eyes widening to saucers, disbelief warring with a dawning horror. That's impossible. You couldn't. Where did you acquire that kind of money? I sold the business 5 years ago, remember? I stated, my voice calm, almost casual. For $2,300,000. I meticulously invested the majority of it, living comfortably off the generated interest. I can certainly afford to allocate a portion of it for my only son's wedding. Leo sat there, utterly stunned, the sheer magnitude of the information overwhelming him. I could almost visualize the gears turning in his mind, rapidly reassessing his entire perception of me. His mother, whom he had so casually dismissed as an aging woman with a paltry pension, had, in fact, been a woman of substantial means, capable of financing a lavish, unattainable wedding and a dream Italian vacation. "Why didn't you tell me?" he finally managed, his voice tinged with a strange blend of accusation and a nascent, unwelcome respect. "Why did you conceal the fact that you possessed such wealth?" "I wasn't concealing it," I answered calmly, my gaze unwavering. "You never bothered to ask." "Your sole interest, Leo, lay in the potential financial gain you could extract from me. Do you recall that ill-conceived startup of your friends, the one you so desperately wanted me to invest $200,000 in without ever truly explaining its nature or viability? It was a promising project," he protested weakly, a shadow of his former bluster. "We could have easily quadrupled our investment. Or we could have lost every single cent," I countered, my voice firm. I chose more reliable, more secure options. And as you can clearly observe, I did not fail. Leo looked utterly bewildered, his initial fury slowly dissipating, replaced by a profound confusion and, surprisingly, a reluctant flicker of respect. He was, for the very first time, looking at me with new eyes, as if truly seeing me not just as a mother, but as an independent, accomplished, and, dare I say, formidable woman. This fleeting moment of enlightenment, however, did not endure. Within a minute, his face reverted to that calculating, self-serving expression I knew so intimately, so painfully well. He leaned forward across the table, his voice softening, almost sickeningly affectionate. "Mother," he began, his tone dripping with an uncharacteristic tenderness, "I understand that you were deeply offended, and you had every legitimate right to be. I was wrong not to invite you. It was a grave, regrettable error." I waited in silent expectation, a familiar weariness settling over me. This was a tactic I knew all too well. First, a carefully worded admission of fault, then, the inevitable, self-serving request. "But you wouldn't want my marriage to begin with such a public, humiliating scandal, would you?" he pressed on, his voice a low, persuasive drone. "Think of Vivian. This isn't her fault. She's innocent in all this. And consider Vivian's parents. They are highly influential figures in this community. They could be of immense assistance to both me and even to you in the future. How, pray tell, could they possibly assist an old woman like me?" I asked, a touch of biting irony in my voice. Leo, utterly oblivious to the barb, continued his plea. "Richard has connections in every conceivable sector. If you ever need a top-tier doctor, a coveted spot in the finest nursing home," I couldn't suppress a short, incredulous laugh, a raw, bitter sound. "A nursing home? Really, Leo? I am 67 years old, in excellent health, and possess more than enough capital to live comfortably and independently for the remainder of my life. Why on earth would I require a nursing home?" He looked momentarily embarrassed, a fleeting blush staining his cheeks, but he quickly recovered, his calculating mind already pivoting. "I was merely offering a hypothetical example. The crucial point is, we would all be in a significantly better position if you rectified the situation. Reverse the payments, and we can host the wedding dinner all over again, with you, of course, in attendance. I will personally extend the invitation, ensuring you are seated in the place of honor." I set down my empty cup, its gentle clink echoing in the tense silence, and slowly shook my head. "No, Leo. The money will not be returned for the wedding." His face transformed instantly. The veneer of feigned benevolence crumbled, giving way to unadulterated, childish fury. "What do you mean, no? You can't simply say no. This is my marriage. My reputation is on the line, being utterly destroyed. I've already repurposed the funds," I stated calmly, my voice flat, definitive. "They will be entirely allocated for Sophia's education." Leo froze, his eyes wide with disbelief, then outrage. "What?" "Last night, I established a trust fund in Sophia's name," I explained, my voice steady, unwavering. $80,000 will be available to cover her educational expenses, her undergraduate studies, her master's degree, perhaps even a doctorate. She's 22. She has her entire, promising life ahead of her. You can't do that, he erupted, his face scarlet with rage. That money was explicitly intended for my wedding. It was intended for your happiness, Leo, I corrected him firmly, my gaze unblinking. But you made it unequivocally clear that your happiness did not, and would not, include me. So, I found a more meaningful, a more worthy use for it. Leo sprang from his chair, his face a grotesque mask of crimson anger. You're doing this out of spite. Out of pure, venomous revenge. You want to ruin my life, destroy everything I've built. I rose as well, meeting my son's furious gaze head-on, my own eyes holding a newfound, steel-hard resolve. No, Leo. I am doing this because, for the very first time in many, many years, I have chosen to respect myself. For years, I have silently endured your neglect, your thinly veiled shame of me, your incessant demands for money, always without a single word of genuine thanks. I allowed you to exploit me, clinging to the naive, desperate hope that one day you would truly see me not merely as a source of financial support, but as a mother who loved you deeply and who deserved respect and affection. I paused, feeling a familiar tightness in my throat, a welling of unshed tears, but I forced them back, refusing to break. But you crossed an unforgivable line yesterday. Ejecting your own mother from her son's wedding is not merely an act of disrespect, it is an act of profound cruelty. And I will no longer, ever, stand for it. Leo stood, breathing heavily, his hands clenched into white-knuckled fists at his sides. You're going to regret this, Mother, he snarled through gritted teeth, his voice a low, menacing growl. I swear to God, you will regret this day. The only thing I regret, I replied, my voice steady, betraying no tremor, is the countless years I squandered allowing you to manipulate me, to control my life with your expectations. But that, Leo, is definitively over now. You, he gasped with impotent rage, his face contorted, utterly speechless, unable to articulate the depth of his fury. What am I going to tell Vivian? Her parents. They're expecting an explanation. Tell them the truth, I shrugged, a small, cold gesture. Tell them that you chose to kick your mother out of your wedding and that she, in turn, withdrew her financial support. Or, by all means, concoct some other elaborate fiction. You were always so inventive with your excuses, weren't you? Leo, in a sudden, violent surge of unthinking rage, grabbed a coffee cup off the table and hurled it to the floor with explosive force. The porcelain shattered into 100 fragments, sending dark coffee grounds spraying across the pristine kitchen linoleum. This isn't over, he hissed, his eyes blazing with fury. I'll find a way to make you pay for this. And the money for Sophia's education. I'll contest that trust. She's my daughter. I have a right to that money. You can certainly try, I said calmly, watching his futile outburst. But the trust is legally impeccable. My lawyer made absolutely certain of that. The money now irrevocably belongs to Sophia, and neither you nor I can take it from her. His face twisted with impotent, agonizing rage. He spun around, storming towards the exit, sweeping his arm across the countertop, sending everything he could reach, the salt shaker, the sugar bowl, a vase of artificial flowers, crashing to the floor. I never want to see you again, he roared, turning back in the doorway, his voice thick with loathing. You are not my mother. You have never been a real mother to me. Those words, harsh and venomous, should have torn me apart, should have inflicted a profound, irreparable wound. But strangely, shockingly, I felt only a profound sense of relief. It was as if the last fragile, toxic thread that had bound me to a lifetime of disappointment had finally, irrevocably, snapped. Goodbye, Leo, I said quietly, the words a gentle release. He slammed the door behind him with such force that the entire house rattled, the windows trembling violently in their frames. I heard the screech of his tires as his car accelerated away, leaving a lingering silence in its wake. I sank back into my chair, my gaze falling upon the shattered porcelain shards on the floor. A potent symbol, perhaps. Our relationship, too, was utterly fragmented, beyond any hope of being pieced back together. Yet, instead of bitterness or grief, a profound, unshakable calm settled over me. For the first time in what felt like an entire lifetime, I was acting solely on my own convictions, unburdened by the weight of my son's endless expectations, refusing to sacrifice my dignity for his fleeting whims. The insistent ringing of the phone jolted me from my reverie. Sophia's name glowed brightly on the screen. I sighed, then answered. "Grandma?" My granddaughter's voice was tinged with palpable worry. "Are you all right? Daddy just called me." He was absolutely furious, screaming. "I'm fine, dear," I answered, my voice steady, comforting. "Your father came by. We talked. He's upset, naturally, but he'll eventually come to terms with it. He said that you transferred the money from the wedding to me, for my education. Is that truly accurate?" I smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "Yes, it's true, sweetheart. I've established a trust fund specifically in your name. The money will be fully accessible to cover all your tuition expenses, for college, for graduate school, perhaps even a doctorate. You're 22. You have your entire, brilliant life stretching out before you." "But, Grandma..." Sophia sounded utterly stunned, overwhelmed. "That's a truly enormous sum of money. I can't possibly..." "You can," I gently interrupted her, my voice unwavering. "And it is, without a doubt, the single best investment I could ever make. You are a smart, incredibly talented young woman. Use that money to gain an unparalleled education, to build a fulfilling career, to become truly, wonderfully independent." I don't know what to say. I could hear the catch of tears in her voice, tears of gratitude. "Thank you. But I'm afraid Daddy will stop speaking to you altogether now after this." "That," I sighed, "is entirely his choice, Sophia. I will always be ready to reconcile if he genuinely desires it and if he approaches me with true remorse. But I will no longer, ever, tolerate disrespect or neglect." "I understand," Sophia said quietly, a newfound maturity in her tone. I'm unequivocally on your side, Grandmother. What he did at the wedding was truly awful." We talked for a while longer. Sophia revealed that Vivian and her parents had departed abruptly early that morning, leaving Leo utterly isolated at the cheap motel. It appeared that not only had the wedding collapsed, but the marriage itself was now hanging precariously by a thread. After speaking with my granddaughter, I set about the methodical task of cleaning up the shattered porcelain and the general mess Leo had inflicted upon my kitchen. As I swept the floor, my thoughts drifted unbidden to the future. Perhaps it was time for a profound, tangible change. Wilmington, after all, held too many painful, suffocating memories. Perhaps it was truly time to relocate, to embark on an entirely fresh chapter of my life, far from the shadows of the past. Once the kitchen was spotless, I settled at my computer, a sense of purpose guiding my fingers as I opened a real estate listing website. Just to browse, to explore the infinite possibilities. Nothing specific, merely contemplating a future unfettered. The phone rang again, a surprising, welcome sound. This time, it was Robert from the bank. "Ms. Albright, I'm calling to confirm that the trust fund in Sophia Albright's name has been successfully executed. All the necessary paperwork is complete, and the funds have been securely transferred. You'll simply need to stop by the branch this afternoon to sign some final authorization papers." "Thank you, Robert. I'll be there this afternoon." He continued, a slight hesitation in his voice. "Your son did call the bank, Ms. Albright, attempting to ascertain the details of the trust, claiming it was some kind of mistake." I sighed. "There is no mistake, Robert. The trust was established entirely on my initiative, and it is fully in accordance with my expressed wishes." That is precisely what I conveyed to him. Ms. Albright, but he was quite persistent. He even threatened legal action. "Let him threaten," I replied calmly, a profound sense of peace in my voice. "He has absolutely no legal grounds to challenge my disposition of my own personal funds." We concluded our conversation, and I returned to browse real estate listings. Now, however, my search expanded beyond houses in distant cities. I was also meticulously examining details for various cruise tours. All my life, I had harbored a secret, fervent dream of seeing the world, of experiencing its vastness and beauty. But I had ceaselessly deferred that dream, first for my family, then for the relentless demands of my burgeoning business, and then, always, for Leo and his insatiable needs. It was finally, unequivocally, time to live for myself. And for the very first time in decades, the mere thought of it did not fill me with a shred of guilt. Sunlight, warm and golden, streamed onto the terrace of my new house in Savannah, Georgia. I sat comfortably in a wicker chair, savoring a glass of chilled lemonade, watching the majestic magnolias sway gently in the soft summer breeze. For months had quietly unfolded since that pivotal day when my life had been irrevocably upended, the day of Leo's disastrous, self-immolating wedding. Those months had flown by, a whirlwind of purposeful activity and long-overdue decisions. The sale of my Wilmington house had been astonishingly swift, finalizing in a mere 3 days at a price even above market value. It was as if destiny itself was actively propelling me towards this profound transformation. The quest for a new home took a little longer, a deliberate, thoughtful process, but the moment I set eyes upon this small, yet exquisitely cozy, single-story house with its inviting terrace and charming garden, nestled in a tranquil Savannah neighborhood, I knew, with an absolute certainty, this was precisely where I was meant to be. Relocating at 67 might strike many as an act of sheer folly. My former neighbors in Wilmington had shaken their heads, murmuring with well-meaning pity that at my age, one should simply remain rooted in the familiar. But I felt, paradoxically, that it was now, with the vast majority of my life gracefully behind me, that I most desperately craved a fresh beginning. I yearned for new air, new faces, new horizons, new opportunities. My initial weeks in Savannah were devoted to meticulously organizing my new abode. I purchased furniture, curtains, dishes. Every single item was brand new, a deliberate decision to leave nothing of my old life behind. It felt like a pristine, unblemished starting point. Then I began to explore the city itself, its sprawling, verdant parks, its intriguing museums, its delightful, hidden restaurants, and its unique, charming shops. I even bravely enrolled in watercolor classes at the local community center. As a young girl, I had harbored a profound love for painting, but had reluctantly abandoned the hobby when the relentless demands of building my business consumed every waking hour. Now, decades later, the familiar brush felt wonderfully natural in my hand, like rediscovering an old, cherished friend. My phone vibrated softly. It was a text message from Sophia. She'd sent a picture of her latest student project, an intricate, highly detailed architectural model, a testament to her burgeoning talent. The caption beneath the photo read, "Highest grade achieved. Thank you, Grandma, for the incredible opportunity to pursue graduate school." I smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached my eyes. After the whole devastating wedding fiasco, Sophia had, with my quiet support, enrolled in a master's program in architecture, finally pursuing a long-held dream she'd previously considered financially unattainable. Now, thanks to the trust I'd established for her, she could dedicate herself fully to her studies, unburdened by any financial anxieties. Sophia remained the sole connection from my previous life with whom I maintained regular, heartfelt contact. We spoke every 2 or 3 days, exchanging messages and updates, and just last month, she had even flown down to visit me for a wonderful, sun-drenched weekend. We walked through historic downtown Savannah, sipping coffee in charming, cozy cafes, discussing her academic pursuits and the unfolding chapters of my new life. Inevitably, at some point, the conversation would gently, cautiously, touch upon Leo. "Dad's still quite angry," Sophia confided, her gaze fixed on her coffee cup. "He doesn't mention you directly, but whenever your name comes up, his face just stiffens. It's obvious." I nodded. That was entirely predictable. Leo had never possessed a forgiving nature. Even as a child, he could nurse a grudge for weeks over the slightest perceived slight. "And what about his relationship with Vivian?" I inquired, carefully. "Did they eventually marry after all that chaos?" Sophia wrinkled her nose, a slight grimace. "Yes, if you could even call it a wedding. It was pathetic, honestly." She recounted the dismal aftermath of the first, spectacular failure. Vivian, understandably, had been incandescent with rage. Her parents had immediately demanded that the engagement be broken off entirely. But Leo, in some desperate, unseen maneuver, had somehow managed to convince them to grant him a second chance, promising to organize a new wedding, a more modest affair, but one that would still convey a sense of respectability. The redo took place a mere 3 weeks after the initial catastrophe. Instead of the Grandeur Hotel's opulent ballroom, they settled for a small, unpretentious restaurant on the far outskirts of Wilmington. Instead of 100 esteemed guests, there were only 30, their closest, perhaps most obligated, friends and family. Instead of a live band and dancing until dawn, they had a single DJ with a laptop, providing background music for a meager 2 hours. And for their honeymoon, instead of a luxurious Italian escapade, it was a dismal weekend at the nearest, most accessible coastal resort. It was so incredibly embarrassing, Sophia recalled, her voice still tinged with mortification. All the guests knew about the first wedding's fiasco. Everyone was whispering, casting furtive glances. Vivian's parents sat there with expressions so grim, it looked as though they were attending a funeral, not a wedding. Vivian herself forced a brittle, painful smile, and Dad looked like he genuinely wished the floor would simply swallow him whole. I could vividly picture the scene. Leo, who had spent his entire life in a relentless quest to impress others, must have been utterly, irrevocably humiliated. "You know what the ultimate irony was, Grandma?" Sophia continued, her voice hardening slightly. In his speech, Dad publicly thanked Vivian's parents for their financial support, a blatant, audacious lie, spoken right in front of everyone, as if they had been the ones to pay for the first wedding, not you. I shook my head slowly, a sad, knowing gesture. Typical Leo. He would rather fabricate a convoluted lie than admit a truth that cast him in an unfavorable, less than perfect light. "And Vivian, how does she truly feel about your father now?" "I honestly don't know, Grandma," Sophia shrugged, a hint of weariness in her voice. "They're still together, physically, but something fundamental has clearly shifted between them. Vivian constantly picks apart Dad's faults, as if he owes her an unending debt. And he's become quieter, withdrawn. He's lost that arrogant, self-assured swagger he always had." Her voice held a note of genuine sympathy, and I knew, instinctively, that for all his profound shortcomings, Leo was still her father, and Sophia loved him, despite clearly seeing his myriad weaknesses. "Has he ever inquired about me?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended. "No," Sophia shook her head, a sigh in her words. "But he knows we communicate. Sometimes, when I'm on the phone with you and he's nearby, I notice him listening, really listening. I think, deep down, he truly misses you, Grandma. It's just that his overwhelming pride won't allow him to admit it, not even to himself." I offered no comment on that assumption. There were enough painful illusions within our family already, and I had no desire to construct new ones. If Leo genuinely missed me, if he truly desired a reconciliation, he knew precisely how to contact me. My phone number had remained unchanged for decades. The poignant memories of that conversation with Sophia slowly dissolved, and I returned fully to the present moment, to my tranquil, sun-drenched terrace in Savannah, where the sun was now beginning its graceful, golden descent below the horizon. I finished my lemonade, the last drop cool on my tongue, and re-entered the house. Papers lay scattered across the polished surface of the table, demanding my focused attention. Glossy brochures from various cruise companies, a pristine booking confirmation, a meticulously compiled list of essential items. In precisely 3 days, I would embark on a Caribbean cruise, a luxurious, 2-week voyage on a magnificent liner, with captivating stops on several exotic islands. A lifelong dream, cherished for decades, was finally, truly, gloriously becoming a vibrant reality. In my youth, David and I had often spoken of such a grand trip, someday when the business is stable, someday when Leo is grown. But David had passed away far too soon, without ever setting foot on those sun-drenched Caribbean beaches. And I, burdened by responsibility, had continued to postpone and defer this cherished dream, first, for the relentless demands of my burgeoning career, then, for my unwavering obligations to my son. Now, at long last, I was doing it. For me, the trip was undeniably an indulgence, costly and extravagant, but I could easily afford it. After the successful sale of my Wilmington house and the subsequent purchase of my new, charming home in Savannah, a substantial amount of capital remained. Furthermore, my carefully diversified investments continued to generate a steady, comforting income, a testament to years of diligent financial planning. I could, at last, indulge in these small, exquisite luxuries without a single shred of worry about my future financial security. Of course, there were fleeting moments of doubt, insidious whispers in the quiet corners of my mind. A voice, eerily reminiscent of Leo's, would insinuate, "What if you fall ill? Who will care for you in a foreign city, so far from everything familiar? Wouldn't it be far more sensible to hoard your money for a truly rainy day?" But I had, finally, learned the vital skill of silencing that insidious voice. Life, I now understood with crystalline clarity, was far too brief, far too precious, to perpetually postpone happiness. My new financial advisor, a brilliant, empathetic young woman named Clara, wholeheartedly supported my newfound philosophy. Ms. Albright, she had stated at our very first meeting, her voice warm with genuine encouragement, "With your impressive capital and your sensible approach to spending, you can absolutely afford to live life to the fullest, to embrace every experience, while simultaneously maintaining a robust financial safety net. You've worked incredibly hard to build that wealth. Now it is undeniably your time to savor the abundant fruits of your labor." I meticulously laid out the items I planned to meticulously pack for the cruise: a vibrant, floral swimsuit, the first new one I'd purchased in years, a daring splash of color, sleek, oversized sunglasses, a wide-brimmed, elegant sun hat, and my brand-new, high-resolution digital camera. Next to them, a well-worn copy of a beginner's Spanish textbook. I had enthusiastically started learning the language 2 weeks prior, a delightful new challenge, hoping to communicate, even minimally, with the vibrant locals on the Caribbean islands. The phone vibrated again, a welcome, familiar buzz. This time, it was Sarah, my new friend from the watercolor painting group. We had arranged to have dinner together, one last gathering before my grand departure. "Leslie, are you ready? I'll be at your place in 20 minutes. "Yes, Sarah, I'm ready. I'm waiting for you right now." I walked to my closet, selecting a light, flowing floral dress, another recent, joyful acquisition. I reflected that I would never have dared to wear anything so brightly colored, so overtly youthful, back in Wilmington. I would have been paralyzed by the imagined disapproval of my staid neighbors, the fear of their leering stares, or Leo's inevitably cutting, ironic comments. But here, in the vibrant, open embrace of Savannah, I was blissfully free of those oppressive anxieties. No one here knew me as Leo's mother, or as the reclusive, grief-stricken Albright widow who kept to herself. I was simply Leslie, a new, curious resident in town, happily taking painting lessons and enthusiastically learning a new language. Sarah arrived precisely on schedule, an energetic woman in her early 60s with a chic, short haircut and an infectious, booming laugh that warmed any room. She was the absolute antithesis of my former, reserved friends from Wilmington. Divorced, childless, she had already journeyed across half the globe and supported herself as a successful freelance photographer, a life of adventure. "Oh, Leslie, what a truly lovely dress," she exclaimed the moment I opened the door, her eyes twinkling with genuine admiration. "It looks absolutely fantastic on you. You'll cause quite a sensation in the Caribbean." We walked together to a charming, unassuming seafood restaurant a short distance from my house. Over a delightful dinner, Sarah eagerly peppered me with questions about my upcoming cruise, offering invaluable advice based on her own extensive travels to some of the very islands on my itinerary. "Be absolutely sure to try the local rum in Jamaica," she advised, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "And whatever you do, don't hesitate to haggle in the bustling markets. It's an integral, vibrant part of the local culture." I listened intently, a wide smile spreading across my face, making mental notes of her tips. It was one of those rare, profound moments when the stark contrast between my suffocating past and my exhilarating present life felt particularly, wonderfully acute. Before, such a conversation would have seemed utterly fantastical, a whimsical impossibility to me. Leslie Albright, haggling fiercely in a vibrant Jamaican market? Unthinkable. Now it was a very real, very exciting, and incredibly liberating possibility. "What about your son?" Sarah suddenly asked, her tone shifting, becoming gentler, more serious. "Is he still estranged?" I sighed, a familiar weariness returning for a fleeting moment. Sarah knew the general outline of my painful conflict with Leo, though not every raw, agonizing detail. "No, he hasn't reached out," I confirmed. "And truthfully, I don't anticipate that changing anytime soon." "His loss, then," Sarah shrugged, her expression pragmatic, unsentimental. "You know, my mother always used to say, children are raised for the world, not just for themselves. Your son is living his life, Leslie, and you, absolutely, have every right to live yours to the absolute fullest." I nodded slowly, a wave of profound gratitude washing over me for her simple, yet deeply wise words. This was precisely the kind of unwavering, clear-eyed support I had longed for, unknowingly, for so many years, practical, unsentimental, simply recognizing reality for what it was, unclouded by misplaced expectations. After dinner, Sarah and I took a leisurely, companionable walk through the enchanting evening streets of Savannah. The city was breathtakingly beautiful at dusk, grand old houses with their inviting, wraparound balconies, picturesque squares adorned with bubbling fountains, ancient, majestic trees draped in ethereal Spanish moss. We reached the bustling Savannah riverfront, where a collection of brightly lit tourist ships were docked, their lights shimmering on the dark water. "In 3 days, I'll be on a much, much larger vessel than those," I remarked, gazing at the impressive riverboats, a thrill of anticipation running through me. "And that, my dear, will be just the beginning," Sarah declared with a playful wink, her eyes sparkling with adventure. "After the Caribbean, there's the Mediterranean, Alaska, Scandinavia. Don't get ahead of yourself." I laughed, a rich, genuine sound that felt liberating. "Let me conquer this first cruise before planning the next continents." We exchanged our goodbyes outside my new house. Sarah enveloped me in a warm, comforting hug and promised to drop me off at the airport on the day of my departure. "And bring me back a magnet from Barbados," she called out as she settled into her car, her laugh echoing in the quiet night. I'm building quite a collection, you know. Back inside my peaceful new home, I performed one final, meticulous check of my cruise packing list. Everything was ready. I settled into a comfortable chair by the window, gazing out at the softly illuminated night garden, bathed in the gentle glow of a distant street lamp. My thoughts, inevitably, drifted back to Leo, but this time, without the usual sharp pang of pain. The last update I'd received from Sophia was 2 weeks prior. According to her, Leo had secured a new, less glamorous position, still within the insurance industry, but with a significantly smaller company and a noticeably reduced salary. Vivian was reportedly quite displeased, viewing it as a major professional setback for him. Yet Leo himself, Sophia observed, seemed to have accepted his new reality with a surprising, quiet resignation. "He's grown quieter," Sophia had remarked, "less boastful, more grounded, almost humble." Perhaps, I mused, the bitter, public lessons of the failed wedding had not been entirely wasted. Perhaps Leo had finally begun to grasp that ostentatious luxury, the relentless pursuit of superficial impressions, were not, in the grand scheme of things, the most important aspects of a meaningful life. Or perhaps it was simply my enduring maternal illusions, a stubborn, hopeful desire to believe that my son still harbored the potential for genuine growth and profound change. Either way, one truth was now unshakable. I had made a firm, conscious decision to no longer allow his problems, his attitudes, or his endless needs to define the trajectory of my own life. For far too many years, I had existed with one eye perpetually fixed on his opinions, his desires, his capricious whims. That painful chapter was now irrevocably closed, sealed shut. I reached over to the nightstand, my fingers brushing against the cool surface of the small photo album, the sole tangible link I'd carried from my old life, apart from my clothes and essential personal papers. I gently flipped through its worn pages until I found a picture taken 35 years ago, me, David, and a tiny, beaming Leo on a sun-drenched beach. We were all smiling, carefree, and wonderfully happy. "I hope you'd approve, David," I whispered, tracing my finger over my husband's smiling face in the fading photograph. "I hope you'd agree that I deserve this new, unburdened life." I carefully closed the album and returned it to its place. Tomorrow marked the final day of preparations for my extraordinary journey. I had to collect the foreign currency from the bank, meticulously re-verify all my travel documents one last time, and complete the final packing of my suitcases. And in precisely 3 days, I would be standing on the expansive deck of a colossal cruise liner, watching the familiar coastline of Savannah slowly, beautifully disappear into the distant horizon. Ahead of me, a vast, boundless ocean of thrilling possibilities would finally, truly open up. This was my crystal-clear vision of my new life, unburdened by the crushing weight of past offenses, unencumbered by the suffocating pressure of unjustified expectations, free from the constant, exhausting need to perpetually prove my inherent worth. Simply a life overflowing with vibrant new impressions, exhilarating new acquaintances, and profound new discoveries. My own life, which I had deferred for so long, but which had, at last, magnificently begun. Before retiring for the night, I stepped out onto the terrace. The Savannah night sky was a breathtaking tapestry, studded with an infinite scattering of brilliant stars. A light, fragrant breeze carried the sweet, intoxicating scent of jasmine from a neighbor's thriving garden. I inhaled deeply, feeling a profound sense of calm and a deep, unshakable reassurance flood through every fiber of my being. "Thank you," I whispered to someone, to something I couldn't quite name, perhaps to fate, perhaps to the universe, perhaps to my own rediscovered strength. "Thank you for this precious second chance." At 67, I was finally living the life I had always secretly yearned for, and there was, miraculously, so much more to see, to feel, to know. A brand new life was just beginning.